I'm Shannon Theobold, and this is Big Food, Big Future, where we teach you how to make a positive impact in the food system to leverage influence for good. Thanks for coming. I am so glad you're here to chat today. Business international innovation expert Tony Hunter today. Now, if you haven't heard Tony's last episode, would definitely go back and check it out. It'll be in the show notes. But today we're talking about what to do when someone in a large corporation just seems stuck in their ways. They have how they've been doing things in their head, and they just can't seem to take a step back from that to see the beauty of what might be. For those of you who don't know, Tony has worked with huge corporations around the world in both the US and Australia where he's based. He's worked with KFC, Burger King, McDonald's, pretty much you name it. So he really knows a thing or two about this stuff. So you've worked with a lot of large food companies. What's your strategy when you encounter someone like that who kind of has their head stuck in the sand?
There's really not a lot you can do to change someone's mind who's firmly entrenched. You can give them some examples, but they'll always find a reason why it doesn't apply to them, or it's different where they are, or some way to deflect it. And it's usually because people don't like change. And what I find with most senior executives in large companies, or even small to medium companies, is they cannot keep up with the rate of change. I ask them, how do you keep up with change? And they say, basically, I don't. I do my best, but really, keeping up with the cutting edge of what's going on is all but impossible. I mean, I specialize in this area, and I can tell you the number of hours I spend each day keeping up with a narrow range of, future technologies in food is enormous.
Yeah. Definitely. I have a hard time keeping up with it. There's always something new popping up.
That's what makes it exciting.
You're right. Yes. Oh, no, we are in a very exciting time. And I feel an acceleration going on in the very definitional sense of that word, that things keep getting faster and faster and faster.
I think so. I was listening to Ray Kurzweil at TED in 2018. And he said people think that we can't keep accelerating exponentially, that there is a limit. And he said, yeah, there is a limit, but it's just so far off that it's almost, for all intents and purposes, where we are today. The limits are infinite.
Wow. That's so cool to think about. Oh, my goodness. It's like the kind of feeling I get when I think about space. It's like I can't even conceptualize how big it is. I can't even conceptualize how far we could go.
And just everything that goes on, like that, their first picture of a black hole they came out with just last week and so on. And, the fact that we have now private corporations going to go to Mars. You don't have to be a country, a world superpower anymore to go to another planet. And it's just mind-boggling.
Yeah. It's wild. So, Tony, you've seen all of this change happen. You've been in this industry a long time, and that experience is so valuable. So what are some big lessons you've learned through this experience, and how would you take them into this rapidly evolving future?
Well, I think what I've learned, Shannon, is that food can be the most simple and the most complicated product. I mean, if you look at it, an apple, very simple piece of food, you can eat that. But then, even then, there are technologies that are now being applied to that. Non-browning apples, the Arctic apples are coming out in the States now. And then you look at the technology that goes into a plant-based burger like the Impossible Burger. The, heme, soy-based heme they've got to produce and put into the product and get the texture and everything else right. There's an enormous amount of technology. So it can be simple as just, an apple off the tree, and then as complicated as something like a plant-based burger. And I think the other complicated thing about food is how it interacts with all our senses. You've got that new field that's been come up in the last few years of neurogastronomy, where people realize what happens when you eat something, the multiple sensory inputs that act on your brain and how you
Mm.
perceive food. My favorite one is sweetness. If you taste a product in a round bowl, you will perceive it as sweeter than if you put it in a square bowl.
What? I had no
So
idea.
things like that. And if you put headphones on people and play them music while they eat crisp potato chips, they cannot work out how crunchy and crispy and fresh they are because they can't hear the sound.
Huh.
So all these
Oh my goodness.
interactions are coming out, and that sensory experience of food is enormously complicated, far more so than we might have imagined.
The phrase adapt or die may seem a bit dramatic here, but I promise you it's not an exaggeration. Just take a look 10, 20 years ago. Here's the New Yorker's Ken Oletta to give you a hint about what can happen if you fail to adapt.
Well, Netflix in the early days, we're talking about the late 90s, was terrified that it was going to go out of business. They were mailing DVDs, and it was very expensive to do that, so they weren't making any money. And Blockbuster was this colossus. And so Reed Hastings, the founder of Netflix, gets on an airplane, goes to Dallas to try and convince Blockbuster to come together and partner in some way. Ultimately, what he really wanted was for Blockbuster to buy Netflix and for Netflix to be their long-range online arm, because he knew one day you would be delivering television over or video over the internet. And Blockbuster could have its stores, but he thought the stores would be in decline, as in fact happened. Blockbuster, in retrospect, stupidly declined to invest in Netflix. And within a couple of years, Netflix had basically helped destroy Blockbuster. Blockbuster was an old technology. You went to a video store to rent a video. Most of the top 20 movies were already out of stock because people had rented them. So there's a lot of frustration. And Netflix was basically, get what you want when you want it, and knew that they would move away from the DVD business to the download video business. So you could watch as many, you could never run out of stock. I think it's very accurate to compare Netflix to a book, and I think that's part of the forward vision that Hastings had. If you think about the way what Netflix has done with what has come to be called binging, it basically replicates a book, because it basically says, you want to watch House of Cards or Orange is the New Black, you don't have to wait and watch it at 10 o'clock on Friday nights or 8 o'clock on Thursday nights. You can watch it whenever you want. And by the way, you don't have to watch commercials. And by the way, which means the show is longer. And by the way, you don't have to watch a single episode. You can watch multiple episodes. Watch it as long as you want. Eat as much as you want. Just as when you read a book. You want to read more than one chapter, you read more than one chapter. So the analogy is apt, and I think he was smart about that. Blockbuster had the resources, and had it been smart enough to go online, invest some of those resources to go online, they would have decimated Netflix. Blockbuster was, its ownership didn't want to spend the money. They were engaged in battles with Carl Icahn, a potential takeover effort on his part. And they suffered the classic innovator's dilemma, which was they basically said, we have a good existing business with these thousands of video stores. Why should we disrupt it for a maybe business, the online world that may never pan out? And let's stick to the knitting, keep to the knitting. And that's what they did, and they lost the knitting.
But now my question is, how will the disruptors adapt? We need many, many more people involved in this space, especially large corporations. And that's amazing. It's amazing that people are taking an interest. But the question remains what this space will look like when we have key players of all sizes. Will companies like Kellogg's and General Mills come to dominate the future food space as well? And what will that mean for smaller companies who have done all the legwork to get us where we are? Tony and I shoot around a few ideas about this, but I want to know what you think too, so let me know. We're in a moment of influx where everyone has to be adaptable. Both small businesses really exploding the market as we know it, and large corporations for whom it takes a lot of time and effort to make even small changes. And both of these players can be at risk. Both large companies who have been negatively impacted and even failed because of smaller innovative players, people like Kodak and Blockbuster, to name a few, as well as smaller companies who fear being overtaken by larger players. The key here is that we can't act in isolation. We cannot operate in a tunnel and hope that the other side, quote unquote, whoever that might be, wherever you might be placed in this spectrum, will just fail or go away. You know, we all need to be invested in, as Tony says, turning this battleship, because we're all working toward the same future. And the thing is, like you gather from Tony's thoughts, there's really no one answer. This is something we're all shaping together and something that's changing every single day. But the importance of collaboration, both in terms of scale and in terms of nation, really cannot be exaggerated. That's what I hope you take away today.